Okay, so I decided to go ahead and look up the video I had referenced in another video. But before I do that, I just wanted to use this bootleg disclaimer for now until I get my stuff together. But under the copyright disclaimer, allowance is made for fair use, for criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. So with that being said, let's go to the video. And
Hi, I'm Nicole Hockley from Sandy Hook Promise.
I was
I know this is
in the previous video about how, just because there's laws doesn't mean that people don't still go ahead and have racist tendencies. That's specifically why I mentioned that couple, because here it is. This was from 2016, so still fairly new, 4 years ago. Um, and California has very strict laws on the books when it comes to real estate about housing discrimination and that type of thing, but it doesn't mean it wasn't violated. And so part of the reason I put the copyright fair use is because I want to watch this with you and kind of just go over some points about this. All right.
Sale on their new home when they were blown away by an old law.
I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. That's ridiculous.
Their move from Folsom to El Dorado Hills was just a matter of miles. But as far as the neighborhood agreement they just signed, they might as well have been worlds, or maybe I should say decades away.
They're just really kind of awful and racist and terrible.
A few people we spoke with used similar words to describe Clause 13 of the Lake Hills CC&R. It's similar to a homeowners association agreement and leaves no room for misunderstanding.
Yeah, so it says prejudicial effect upon the value of user properties. And I was gonna say something, but I'm gonna play nice. I'm gonna play nice.
No person except those of the white Caucasian race shall occupy or reside upon any residential lot or plot in this subdivision, except when employed in the household of a white Caucasian tenant or owner.
And you have to sign off that you agree to these things.
Some long time.
And so this was interesting too, because if I really wanted to, I could pull up a map and look to see how big of a radius that community is. But and it's interesting that the comments are off on this, but people actually signed off on this. Now, I do know from the real estate side, at some point you're just signing a bunch of documents and you're not paying attention to what you read. But that's just to tell you how many people have signed off on this. And I think when they go further on, I mean, it's even things that are inexcusable coming from the property manager. So let's keep going.
Lake Hills residents were aware of the rule, but didn't pay it any mind since there are non-whites in the neighborhood.
And there were people who were aware of the rule, but still went ahead with it. Okay. That's a problem. I don't know how you could sleep with that kind of conscience, with that on your mind. And it's one of those things where it's groupthink, where it's kind of like, well, if everybody else is okay with it, nobody else has put up a fuss, I'm not going to put up a fuss about it. Okay. That's a problem.
And there doesn't seem to be any effort to actually enforce that law. But the Fosters say that's not the point.
Everybody knows that you can't enforce things like that. It still sends a message.
So they're sending one right back.
It's not the world that we want our kids to grow up in.
Taking their outrage to community networking site nextdoor.com. They're raising awareness among their neighbors, some of whom, like new resident Dwight Holko, didn't realize what they'd signed when they moved in.
Should be reversed just to get off the records. And just out of curiosity, I'd probably like to find out who did that law and what their background was.
I would be interested to know that myself. Really and truly. And, we're in the summer. I might just have some time to kind of look into this and see if there's more information on, how far this clause went back and who wrote it into the books and what was the outcome of this. I just might. We'll see.
The motivation for that whites-only policy, according to the CC&R, is that letting non-whites in would lower the property value of the community. These rules have been on the books since 1961, and the person in charge of enforcing them said he had no idea.
And the reason when I'm saying I'm going to try to play nice is that property values were mentioned in terms of how expensive the condos at the in Florida was. Bear in mind, this was built 40 years ago, and so I think the laws have progressed and changed since that time. But if you're seeing that this is still on the books here in 2016, I'm pretty sure it was on the books over there too, and it just becomes one of those things where it becomes a culture, a way of mind, a way of living, and they just never broke out of that cycle.
Really quite embarrassing.
Brent Dennis has been with the El Dorado Hills Community Service District, which handles rule enforcement for over 30 communities, for 4 years. He says he can't explain why this rule was put in place, but says it's definitely not enforced, violates federal law, and he guarantees his staff will correct the problem promptly.
Have our staff start to glean through all of the.
One of the things I want to address with this is I find it really funny that when these type of things happen, all of a sudden they try to play ignorance is bliss. Oh, I didn't know. Woe is me. If it's not mental health issues or being drunk, it's I just didn't know. OMG. Like, I cannot believe this. And so they're kind of low-key like lucky that somebody didn't sue them for filth on this, because you cannot what is it? You cannot claim ignorance on this, right? And like they said, there's laws about it, but it didn't mean it didn't prevent it from being written. It didn't prevent it from being on the books, and there's no excuse why that should have been there. This reminds me, there was another case I can actually follow up in, but close to my city, there was a guy who, and this is fairly new, so I don't know how much information is out about that. I will look into it. I'll look into it and I'll see if I can bring it back and share it, because this happened last year in 2020. No, I correct, in 2019. In 2019. This had happened, but there was a gentleman looking to buy a condo in Southern California, and they had, I believe they had like 10 units left, and he called in to request to see the unit, and they're like, yeah, the unit is still available, book the appointment. So he went with his uncle, and as soon as he walked through the doors to the leasing office, to the buying office, or whatever, they're like, you know what, sir, I'm so sorry. All of the condos have been filled, blah, blah, blah. So he gave it a couple of weeks, and then he saw that the listings were still up. So he called again. He had a friend call in to confirm how many units were available and if they still were, and they got the same message. Yes, please come on in. The condos are still available. We'd love to show you a tour. From what it sounds like, they were ecstatic to set the appointment. And so when the young man called again to inquire, they told him, no, the apartment is not available. So this is still happening in 2020. And there's no excuse. And I really want to look into that. I really hope he sued them for everything that they're worth, you know? So my point being is, just because it's not written somewhere doesn't mean that there's an unspoken code. Just because there's laws doesn't mean that people are still not taking on these practices. And as someone who used to work in corporate, you cannot claim ignorance of the law. So
Those, and just make sure there aren't any other examples like that that need to be updated.
yeah, so go ahead, comment down below. That's it. All right, peace.